Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Spunkify here for MMOBomb.com, and welcome back to the Free-to-Play Cast, episode 69, a risque episode, if you will. I'm your host, Spunkify, and today we've got two hosts for you, two co-hosts, I should say. Kevin, starting out with. Kevin, how you doing?
Pretty great.
Pretty great, he says. And then, of course, Jason, our latest addition to MMOBomb. Jason, how are you doing this fine Sunday evening?
I'm doing pretty well, and I like the new Star Trek movie.
You like the new Star Trek movie? Oh, we just having a discussion with it before we started recording. I said it sucked. Jason likes it. Maybe we can talk about it later in the episode without giving out spoilers. That'll be a little bit difficult.
Everybody dies.
Everybody. There are lasers and ships and explosions, I guess.
There's not as many explosions as the previews make you think, though.
I know. Well, that's sort of what previews are meant to do, is sort of like grasp and pull you in so you can pay down that $21 for 2 tickets and then sit through the movie bored. That was just me, though. Let's go ahead and get right into the news. So, the elephant in the room, the first big topic of this week, of course, is Rift going completely free-to-play. I was one of the early adopters of Rift. I bought it before it came out. I played it for a while, and I generally enjoyed the experience, but this was right after I sort of got off my WoW fix. I stopped sucking on the teat of World of Warcraft, and I tried to switch to a bunch of different MMORPGs, and Rift was one of the first ones to do it. And I have to say, Rift isn't a bad game, or wasn't a bad game last time I played it a couple years ago. And it is nice to see Trion Worlds announce a completely free Rift, because now it sort of gives me an opportunity to go back to the game. Now, did either of you dabble in Rift at all, or at least like peruse the forums or check it out, see what it was about?
I did. I had a couple classes. I had a warrior with, I think my souls were the... this is going to bug me now.
Why don't you explain first the soul systems for those that aren't familiar with it?
So how Rift worked was you could pick one of the 4 major classes. They were warrior, cleric, rogue, and mage. And then each one had, I think when I played it, it only had about 6 different souls. I know they've added more since, and I believe there's even more coming out. But basically the souls were like secondary classes. They each had their own abilities and skill trees, which you could put a specific amount of points in. You could just have a set number. So you could balance, let's say you wanted someone that was really tanky, but at the same time had something else. Depending on how you assigned your points within the souls, you could achieve that. And so it actually allowed for a lot of customization.
Yeah, there was quite a lot. I remember my character being a rogue, and I don't remember my third soul, because you could have up to 3. But I remember my 2 primary ones being a bard, which I thought was awesome, because you hadn't been a bard in MMO for a long time. And I was like a bombardier kind of guy, so I could throw a bunch of bombs on someone and then detonate them, like satchel charges. So I would put a bunch of bombs on someone and PvP, and then I would wait for them to get like half health, and they would instantly detonate and kill them instantly. It was overpowered as crap in PvP, and I'm pretty sure it got nerfed after I stopped playing. But it was so much fun. It was some of the most fun I had in PvP in quite a long time. Jason, did you ever play any of Rift?
Yeah, I got in right when it first came out, and I could definitely see why you would have come from WoW to play it, because it was very, very much like WoW when it first started out. I mean, pretty basic, go to a hub, do the 4 quests from there, go to the next one, and so on, get to level 50 and raid, That was pretty much what it was. Now, I got back in when Storm Legion came out a few months ago, and I got to see a lot of the improvements they made and how they really tweaked a lot of different things to give you a lot more to do than just that basic really experience. I liked a lot of what they did. So
what are the notable changes that you could mention?
Well, some of the things are like instant adventure is something they do where you can just queue up and it'll just take you to do stuff in the open world wherever you are. And it is still kind of the same. They still just have mostly stuff to kill, but then you'll go to somewhere else. It'll take you there, and then it just kind of takes you all around. Of course, all the different land masses they have. I mean, the Storm Legion area is really huge. They added...
Wasn't there an open world boss in Storm Legion?
I never got to see... I always saw the video of the big guy, Volan, I think was his name, that really gigantic robot thing that we saw.
Yeah.
In the videos. I've never actually faced him. I only got level 51, so I didn't get that far in it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot. It's much improved. It's not just, like a WoW clone as much as it was.
So in terms of what's going to happen with it going free to play, I kind of have a hunch that Trion Worlds is making it free to play due to the recent misfortunes of their other MMORPG, Defiance, which has sort of been a turd on release, if you will. But yeah, the Rift converting to free to play, certainly it already has a big enough following. It's one of the still most popular pay-to-play at this moment, because obviously it's going free-to-play, but it still was one of the most popular pay-to-play MMORPGs out there, especially considering that it was a theme park, quote-unquote, MMORPG, whereby you did everything typically that you would do in any other World of Warcraft-style MMO. But with the switch over to free-to-play, everything's going to be free. There's been a lot of questions in the article that I posted on MMOBomb, whether everything would be free or you'd have to pay for expansions and what have you. And it is true, everything, including expansions, all of that content is completely free. So it's most similar to, say, Terra's free-to-play model in that you get everything. You can pay for cosmetic items, convenience boosts, which are experience boosts, a gold boost as well. Basically, you accrue gold much quicker. Instant bank access, faster mounts, currency and rep boosts, etc. But those are all in addition to what you would normally get if you weren't a paying member. If you would get, you get a bunch of extra stuff essentially, but nothing is excluded from you that you wouldn't normally get if you had been a paying member when it was pay to play. That's what I was trying to say. So I'm really looking forward to it. Rift is still, as I have overheard over the past year or two, it's still a very good MMORPG for those interested in a raiding experience most similar to World of Warcraft. So it still has the Holy Trinity. They still have diverse combat mechanics and very good dungeons. I remember the dungeons in the game being extremely fun and interesting. And of course, they have the Rift events. I'm sure they have different events now beyond this, the Rift events. But Rift events, for those of you who are familiar with those, are basically dynamic events that happen throughout the world whereby a Rift will spawn and it will spawn out enemies. And if you don't take care of it, those enemies eventually will migrate into hubs and take them over, and you'll lose like a quest hub, and you'll lose like a spawn point essentially if you'll die. It was very important in some areas to reclaim those areas because it was a crucial area that you had a majority of your quests located at, and you would need oftentimes a large party to retake it. I remember a lot of times trying desperately, like in the level 30-ish area, to finish a quest hub, and I could not because it had been completely overrun by NPCs or monsters, and I couldn't do it by myself. You needed a party to do it. So I'm actually looking forward to this. I'm going to be definitely dropping back in it. Whether or not I roll my old character, I'm unsure. I don't even really remember the account name for that, but I'll have to check it out. Will you guys be going back to it, at least to check out what's been sort of changed and what they are going to be adding to the game? Because there is a new patch coming out soon.
I believe I will. I think I still actually remember my account info, so it shouldn't be that hard to find. I just fear I will be massively under-leveled and hopefully can do something about that. But I'm planning on checking it out for sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely take the time to look back into it because I've kind of stalled out around in Storm Legion because I was still playing a lot of Guild Wars 2 at the time, so I'm a little less into that. So I'm going to definitely take some time to get back into Rift.
You know, it's curious, Kevin. You made the quick mention that you don't know how much you'll be behind, essentially. I've been reading some comments and some discussions. Trion did mention that they would be selling some gear through the cash shop. It wouldn't be the best gear obtainable in the game, but it is gear, and it seems like it'll be gear that basically will get you up to speed with the current level or tier of raiding content. And it kind of makes sense because I'm like, well, I guess you could go through the old content if you were able to get a group, but you know, any of us that have played World of Warcraft, you know how hard it is to take an alt essentially before they started introducing like new heroics and whatnot. But take an alt and then gear them up so that they're capable of doing the current tier of content. So I can essentially see why they're doing it, and at least it's good that they aren't letting players, you know, just buy the top tier of content or in terms of gear. But I am still, and I can understand everybody's sort of concerns about that being quote-unquote pay to win. We'll just have to see, I guess, how good that gear is in comparison to what you can get if you decided not to pay and decided just to go through some of the current content in order to sort of bring yourself up to speed. What are your guys' feelings towards that?
Well, they actually showed they had a webcast on, or a live stream rather, on Friday where they actually showed some of the menu interface for the cash shop, and they showed the gear panel, and it was like you said, all except, you know, I don't remember, it's like, for instance, in PvP there's like I think 8 tiers or something. You could buy up to tier 7 with real world money, but tier 8 you can only get through the normal ways, you know, within game currency. Now, you still would have to have like the level of glory or whatever, or in PvE rather, you'd have to be of a certain level or whatever to get the gear. So you can't just make a new character or roll them up with all the best stuff. You still have to do some work to get the requirements to get there. But then you don't necessarily have to pay up, save up all your tokens and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something that really irked me when I first started playing World of Warcraft, and I was playing in TBC is when I actually got to level 70, towards the end of TBC rather. And I was like, all right, let me start raiding Karazhan, and then like everybody's like in like Sunwell, and I'm like, come on, can I get a group to do this so I could actually get some gear? And like no one would ever do it, so I completely wasted my time raiding in that expansion, because it's true, it's really hard to get people to go back and do old content, especially if they're like veteran players. So I can definitely understand why they're doing it. I would hope that they would also give us some other option to get apical gear of the level required, other than going through stuff that does require big groups. Like, I know World of Warcraft now adds new heroic dungeons every time they add a new tier, and it certainly it makes sense from a player perspective. I mean, who wants to go through and like start at the very beginning and then go through every single tier just to get yourself up to the current tier? But I would hope that it's at least readily accessible for players to get rating level gear ready for the newest content, other than paying for it.
Well, that's some of what I was talking about in some of the other new things they had, in that they did have like the 1 and the 2, and I don't know, maybe there were 3-man instances you could do as well. But there's stuff you can do with smaller groups. I don't quite think the payoff is quite as big as if you do like a full 5-man or whatever, but you at least can get to that point. It's in some way.
Okay, I understand. Well, I'm very much looking forward to that. Sounds like you guys are as well. So why don't we go ahead and move on to some more discouraging news? And that is in regards to TimeGate Studios. Now, TimeGate Studios is, of course, the developers, the co-developers, I should say. I shouldn't just label them as the only developers, but the co-developers of games like Alien Colonial Marines, as well as Section 8, which was a futuristic FPS. I actually thought the game was pretty good. And then, of course, the upcoming FPS that was free-to-play, Minimum, which is what we've been sort of talking about the last couple of weeks. They're a little bit of hot water. They owe quite a substantial amount of money, to the point where they have filed for bankruptcy, essentially, and let go of their entire staff. That pretty much is the end of that company, as far as I'm reading. I don't think they're really going to be able to come back from that kind of stuff. They owe so much money to everybody, including a pizzeria, where they have a tab of $34.80. I mean, if you can't even pay for your lunch or your dinner, I mean, I don't know when they bought this food, but if you can't pay for that, then you got some mismanagement of funds, I'd have to say. But is it really their fault? Is it the fault of the people managing the company, or sort of who they're doing deals with, or what do you guys think?
I just think this kind of just shows some irresponsibility by the people running the company. I wouldn't expect that most of the employees would feel like, oh, let's not pay our bills or this and that. But I think a lot of it actually does roll back to like the Colonial Marines game. I can't feel like how much money they spent on the game, they got very much back, and that's probably where a lot of the issues rose from. And then trying to dive that much more money into a new game, and that's maybe why they were rushing the development of Minimum, or at least releasing so much content so early, was that they were trying to ring up some interest so that they could pay for it. Because when a game flops that bad, if it's not a huge studio behind it, I just don't see how they can absorb that kind of a financial hit. And I think we're just seeing the outcome of it.
Well, go ahead. Jason.
I was just going to say that I looked this up a little bit, and I saw that Colonial Marines, despite being ripped by every reviewer and whatever, it sold like 1.3 million copies in the U.S. and Europe. So that's not bad. It's not like it was a complete flop financially. You'd think if they got that money, then they'd be okay. But you're right. It probably was some other kind of mismanagement, and this had to be like some huge success. I almost think of like 38 Studios when they shut down. Like they got, I think, about 1.2 million copies of Reckoning, but they were told they had to be like 3 million or so to make their bills or whatever. Maybe they were in that kind of situation where they just needed to be phenomenal and it was only okay.
See, I think that sort of gets into the whole discussion about AAA developers now having such huge costs for games, and there's so many hands reaching into that cookie jar to pull a piece of the profits out, that by the time it gets down to the people that actually make the game, or the company that's managing the company that makes the game, you have to sell a ton of copies. I mean, an absolute ton, in order to say it's a financial success. I mean, Square Enix labeled Hitman Absolution and Tomb Raider, the newest one, failures, because they sold like 3 million copies each, but they were failures because they didn't meet the mark that they wanted them to meet, and for it to be a financial success. Yes, it was a success in the sense that there was a lot of copies sold, but not enough to overcome the cost. And there's been some discussion that Alien Colonial Marines, some of the funds was taken from the development of that and taken from a TimeGate to fund the development of Borderlands 2. There's allegations of that. So there's definitely some money being mismanaged behind the scenes. And I think it's sort of unfortunate for TimeGate, because I think they've been sort of saddled as the scapegoat for Aliens Colonial Marines, whereby, it was a joint effort. It was basically them combined with Gearbox basically offloading stuff for them to do. And it's kind of unfortunate, because I really, really was looking forward to Minimum. I kind of liked the whole idea of a not realistic shooter that had giant golems smashing each other to pieces.
Yeah, and it's also just kind of a big issue for some of these employees. I mean, they've spent a lot of time and effort over the past as long as they've been working on this game. And, I mean, if anyone who works on a game, especially yourself, you could know that you invest a lot in it. So it's hard for someone, I think, to invest this much and then just kind of be let go and like, well, what's going to happen to our game? What are we doing for a job? It's really sad.
Yeah, that's one thing about the video game industry, it seems. The development side of the video game industry is that jobs are so fickle. 1 minute you're employed, the next minute your company has no money and you're completely out of a job. And you're on the street with however many other employees got let off. I mean, we've seen that recently with Trion Worlds. They let off a lot of the staff for Defiance. It just seems to be a trend with developers. They just shed employees, just left and right. That's like the first thing that they do is just shed all of their employees. But I really don't think that Minimum's going to go anywhere. I kind of think it's dead in the water. Do you think that they'll end up selling it off, or do you think it's not really kind of like a much hyped title that would constitute them selling it off, for actually something that's worth?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you said, it's not a big name. So if it goes, it probably wouldn't go for much. Or it might just be like they'll just figure that they'll get so little for it that they're not even going to bother.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't have a huge brand name behind it. They had a little bit of hype, but I mean, it's got more hype now that the company is failing, that the game is actually being made. And generally speaking, when a game that's being made by one company and that company shuts down, if that game is going to be transferred to another company, people don't have high hopes for that kind of stuff. Because, you have a different vision of it, you have a different direction. Who knows how much of the game was actually completed? Of course, we saw a trailer of it, but that was of one level, it looked like. And it certainly was more, not cinematic, but at least tailored in the sense that it wasn't just a strict gameplay video. It was a trailer for the game. So, yeah, I kind of bummed about Minimum. I really am. I wish I would have seen the light of day of that. I wish the game would have seen the light of day, rather. But best of luck to everyone that was involved that no longer has a job. Hopefully someone else will pick up the team, because I don't think that the studio personnel are without talent. It's just sort of unfortunate that the company has so much financial troubles. All right, so moving on to our third article here. Now we're talking a little bit about DC Universe Online. It had a recent update called Origin Crisis, not to be confused with Infinite Crisis.
I wasn't even gonna go there.
Yeah, not to be confused with Infinite Crisis. Two separate games. One's a MOBA, one's an MMORPG. Jason, you got a chance to sit down with the developers and kind of check out this new content for the game. The game's been steadily getting new updates pretty systematically ever since it went free to play. And what exactly did this newest update entail that you saw?
Well, the big thing they had was something called Iconic Anomalies. They're a new kind of like solo endgame instance kind of thing, where you either team up with, well, if you're a hero, you go to Batman's lab. If you're a villain, you go talk with Lex Luthor, and they put you in this kind of what-if scenario where you take on the role of an actual hero. Like in the first one he showed us was you were Bizarro, and you had to go through and see like his origin story in the Luthor Labs, see how that went, and then you fought through all sorts of stuff there. Another one you went as Huntress, and then I think there are 4 of them total. Those were 2 of the ones we saw. Another thing that they have is apparently their 4-man, I forget what they're called, whatever they call their 4-man instances. Those are like actual time travel where you supposedly go back, see how things could be different if a certain thing happened. Like in one of the situations, it's supposed to be if Thomas and Martha Wayne hadn't been gunned down, what would happen? What would happen to Batman and to Gotham? And
see, that's actually
like
really
that.
cool. Like,
yeah,
changing the iconic storylines, what we've grown up with how we've known these characters to be created. You know, how does that actually change sort of how they behave, how they act, what the future entails? You know, what if Batman was never created, kind of thing. I like those alternate, reality sort of deals.
Yeah, one of the other ones was one related to Superman, where he actually becomes friends with Lex Luthor, and together they clean up Metropolis. So that's yet another kind of weird thing.
That's pretty awesome. Now, they usually add like new powers every single time that they add out a new update, which is nice. I like the fact that they add sort of iconic powers people can pull. What are the powers this time?
They were called quantum powers. That's the power set they have, which has a lot of things based around like manipulation of time, space, even gravity. One of them was like a thing that makes a gravitational singularity that sucks guys in. Another one is quantum tunneling. It was called, which is like a little mini blink, like teleporting ahead very shortly. Another one lets you shoot like I couldn't quite figure out what the utility of it was, but it's like it lets you shoot your missiles through a portal. That then the missiles show up next to the guy.
Now, I don't know if like you can shoot from any direction. And then, like,
no, but I think it's just like a special effect. Because I mean, normally it could just be like a normal attack that hits at 1,000 range, but here it's like it just flies for 200 and then teleports 600 and hits him for 200. So it's like that's probably all that was. But it's fancy stuff.
Fancy stuff. It's a showroom kind of power. You're like, look what I can do, and like I can just go up to you and punch you. Like, why would I want to do?
Well, I wonder now if you had like 2 villains in a row, like if you shot at one, the one behind,
and then teleport.
No, it doesn't hit the one in front because it teleports through the portal. I don't know. Whatever.
That's strange. Well, it's kind of interesting. Like, don't they usually base the superpowers on like an iconic superhero, supervillain? So what DC Universe character has quantum powers? I don't even know who that is. Like, are they just making stuff out of their hat? They're just taking something out of the hat and like, well, this is what we're doing now. Because I think one of them was like the Green Lantern powers. So like, okay,
sure.
That makes sense. Now we're just dealing with time manipulation. And I'm sure someone in the comments will say, yeah, that's based off of this character, that character.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it for the real comic geeks to. Yeah, I'm an amateur comic geek.
I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm a big giant comic book geek.
You work in a comic store.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know Owlman historically has done a lot with like temporal manipulation. He's technically a villain, and he's within the DC 52. I'm sure if I spent the time to actually go research it, I could find it. I'm just like blanking on the top of my head right now.
They'll reconnect it somehow. They'll be like, all right, it's this specific person that actually gives you those powers and whatnot. That's your inspiration. But the full article about this is by Jason. Jason's lovely writing skills is up on MMOBomb.com. If you want to see a little bit of the screenshots, there's also an official launch trailer of it. And I highly suggest you guys check it out if you're interested in anything related to DC Universe or superheroes in general. But overall, that's an interesting update. And we're going to go ahead and talk about another update, which is that City of Steam has now entered into its closed/open beta. And it's sort of becoming like a thing now, like a really common thing I've noticed, where people go into closed beta, but it's not actually closed beta. City of Steam, of course, is the steampunk MMO based in the browser using the Unity engine. Perhaps one of the better, if not best, browser-based MMORPGs out there. At least that's what I've seen from the comments of what people have been talking about. And from my experiences, I've actually been quite surprised by its gameplay. The new beta basically was supposed to be open to everyone if they had a specific beta key from previous times, or if they got an email, but now it's just open to everyone, which basically makes it an open closed beta. But they're hoping that there won't be any character wipes, nothing official, So don't get your hopes up that you're not going to lose your character. And they also said that they were, of course, not bringing every character in terms of every class and every race into the game immediately, because they want to do some focus testing, which, that's what beta is for. And they've done some improving of the performance and bug fixes and new additions, including new events, basically, that you can do with people in an open world area, new animations, and most importantly, you're able to jump now, which I think is important in any MMORPG. The ability to
now
jump
it's done.
and parkour.
They can launch now because you can jump. It's finished.
I know, they're like, oh, they added that jump key, like you can hit it on the space, it's done.
Well,
It now.
How many games have you played where you're like, this game would be so much better if I could only jump over this thing?
Guild Wars 1.
Yeah.
Yep.
Guild Wars 1
it's actually, as much as we joke about it, it's a serious thing. Jumping is serious.
And though not an MMO, all the Metal Gear games I've ever played.
I actually never could get into Metal Gear. I could not, for the life of me, get into Metal Gear.
All right.
But yeah, it would make sense to being able to jump away from things. But I guess jumping makes noise, and in Metal Gear, you're supposed to be super secret and hide in boxes.
Maybe he just has really heavy boots. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be like Link's boots from Zelda, where they just clamp to the ground and you can't actually jump. You just like
magnetic.
Magnetic. There we go. Exactly. So, have you guys actually played City of Steam at all? I've dabbled in it. If you can't tell already, my name is Spunk, which is steampunk put together.
Oh, that's where it comes.
Yes, it doesn't refer.
It
to
wasn't.
It wasn't.
Yeah, I was thinking other things, but
Well, we already went risky with the episode number, so let's just continue down this road.
I know, right? Yeah. Most people think it's other things, but in fact, it's because I am a fairly big steampunk nerd. It is sort of my beloved genre that doesn't get enough attention in games, I feel, except for recently, Guns of Icarus, but that's not a free-to-play game. But I still bought it because it's amazing.
But no, I have not played City of Steam yet, but yes. I probably will now.
Circling back around, yes, City of Steam. What about you? Let me talk a little bit about the fact that this is a browser-based MMORPG. Because I think that is something that has been a big detractor for a lot of people. Unity has definitely made it a lot easier for people to get into browser-based MMOs. We have Cartuga, which is another Unity-based MMO. We have City of Steam, of course. And other games that you may not know use Unity are Offensive Combat. There's Gunswords, which is the turn-based strategy game. There's several of them. There's numerous of them that use it. And it's a good engine to do that. And I'm really glad to see that they're furthering technology in the browser space. But do you guys think that players will ever just get past that in general, to where when you hear the word browser, it doesn't immediately make you want to throw up?
I like to think that it's like free to play. Like 3, 4, or 5 years ago, we just thought free to play games were crappy, all of them. But now that it's come along to be acceptable. Whereas I like to think that again, maybe 2 years or so ago, browser based was crap. That's what we pretty much thought of for all of those. But it's taken a little while. It's going to require some really good games like maybe City of Steam to get people to realize that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, and I think we're still in that phase where the majority of browser-based games are still crap. I mean, at least in some respects, right?
Sure.
So I definitely say that it's going to take like a really, really big free-to-play game on the browser that pulls tons of people in, that is sort of a game that everybody can get behind for that transition to really take effect. And it could be City of Steam. It honestly could be City of Steam. I mean, we've sort of seen it in all the other respective genres on the PC in terms of downloads. If you think about what sort of free-to-play game stands out in your mind as the free-to-play game that really got a lot of people behind the free-to-play movement, I mean, League of Legends, that's a huge one, obviously. It's like the elephant in the room in terms of free-to-play games. And it really showed that a free-to-play game can be well-made and persist for a long time and not arguably grab all of your money in the first 10 minutes playing it. And certainly I hope games like City of Steam do that same thing and actually garner an audience behind them for the browser that can share both in the browser-based community and then in the PC community that like their client-based games as well. So I wish the developers of City of Steam, R2 Games, I think is the name of the company, I wish them the best of luck. I certainly will be checking it out, and it is very obvious that the developers do care about the community because they have been so involved with the development and with the community outreach in terms of like figuring out what the community wants and just doing activities with the community and what have you. So I really hope City of Steam does do well because it's been in beta and alpha for like forever, and it really needs to come out and excel because otherwise I'm going to feel terrible for them. Alrighty then, so moving on, we have some more MOBA news. Man, just how long is MOBA news gonna just perforate MMOBomb? We have someone late to the party, someone who we can't think about free to play without sort of having that, like I mentioned before, that little heave in their stomach. You know, the little bit of stomach turn, like oh, yeah.
EA. Why?
EA has announced a MOBA. Dawngate is the name. Okay, I have to strike that. They haven't announced the MOBA. The website was found for the MOBA, and the website gave some glimpses as to what the MOBA would be. There is no trailer. There is just a blip of information about it on the website. The ability to sign up for beta, and a forum link that goes nowhere currently. But there are some things that sort of give us the mindset that EA is in when creating this. If you think about it, I like to think of EA as a company who, they have a big binder, they open their binder up, and they look in that and they're like, what do we not have? And they flip through pages and they have like all these pictures of everything that they have. Like, well, we have an MMORPG, Star Wars, okay, that's free to play. We have a racing game, you know, Need for Speed World, okay. We've got some shooters. We got dice under our thumb that allows us to make all the Battlefield games free to play. All right, so they kind of just flip through this, and they're like, it comes to the spot. They have it all set up already. It says MOBA. There's an area for them to put a picture in there, and they're like, all right, it's time for us to make a MOBA. We see everybody else making a MOBA. We've got to get on that bandwagon too. And
they probably expected to have this. They probably expected to have the 70 million players League of Legends have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because that's how they think about everything, right? They always shoot for the big numbers. They never go for like modesty. Like, I think I would have had more respect for EA had they not even announced the MOBA. Had they just been like, we're just not going to try for that market. Had they been like, oh yeah, we're going to make a MOBA too. So Dawngate, some of the description of that says that it's built from the ground up to look and feel familiar while offering a whole new way to experience MOBA gameplay. Man, nothing really stirs my confidence in a developer when it says, we're making this look and feel familiar. We're not, we're taking the safe route. It's fantasy, if you can't tell by the one image available. There's something that looks like mages and someone that looks like they're in armor and some girl with a crossbow and whatnot. Not a crossbow, it's an archery bow, rather. And then they go on to say that basically it's going to be empowers you to forge the champions you love for the roles you want in a competitive arena, shaped by ever-evolving, community-driven content and story.
Is it just me, or does this sound like absolutely nothing in a lot of words?
It pretty much does, because, like, what MOBA game isn't about community? Like, that's like an integral part of a MOBA. Like, I don't really understand what they're trying to say or allow us to extrapolate from that.
I will say this, though. If they can provide a better community than the League of Legends community, I will go to this game immediately.
It was incredible. I took a break from League of Legends. I played a lot of Dota 2. And for some reason, I had in my mind that the Dota 2 community was worse than League of Legends. And I played the Dota 2 community, and it was nice. It was pleasant. Sure, there were some trolls and some people. But overall, I had a way, way better time in Dota 2 than I ever had in League of Legends. Okay. Like, in Dota 2, we could be losing horrendously, and it still was a better time than, like, a close game in League of Legends. Like, I couldn't believe it. It seemed like more people were playing League of Legends as a job than the people playing Dota 2 for fun.
Yeah, it has gone downhill in a hurry. It's growing ever more toxic by the day, I would say. And it seems like a lot of games you play, people are just looking for someone to blame as fast as possible, no matter how great things are going. And it just makes it generally unfun to even attempt to play.
I don't know what has happened, but I wouldn't expect EA to really have the capability of creating a better environment for players than, say, Valve. Because if anything's shown us from past history, Valve is pretty good at creating nice environments for communities. I mean, the Team Fortress 2 environment community is nice. Their Steam Hub in general, players come together there in multitude of games. If you basically have a game on Steam, the community for your game is for the most part pleasant, it seems. Even if you're not someone directly involved with Valve and a published game for Valve. But what community games they do have with Team Fortress 2 and Dota 2 seem like they're leagues above what games like League of Legends is. So I really don't know how EA is going to tackle that one. But of course, we can't really extrapolate or talk about too much about what ifs and whatnots because there's really nothing to be said about the game because there isn't any information. But it is worth noting that there is a MOBA in the works. Curiously enough, it is made by a studio called, where is it at here? I'm looking at the article that I wrote. Waystone Games.
Oh, Waystone.
Waystone Games is the company credited for Dawngate, which, according to some sources that I checked out, is a rebranded portion of Visceral Games. Visceral Games, like you were mentioning, Jason, was the developers behind Dead Space, who were said to be working on a MOBA last October-ish or so. So I'm wondering if it's the same MOBA or if they're making two, but that kind of seems highly unlikely.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not licensed in some way. You'd think EA would be a company that would have the money to do that, and instead, if it's just going to be more or less another game that's sort of like League of Legends or whatever or Dota, why would you play that over those games unless there's some amazing hook to it, which more often than not is something like a license, an intellectual property.
Yeah, they own so many companies. I mean, they have DICE. They've licensed the Battlefield franchise to make free-to-play games. They obviously have licensed Star Wars and BioWare to make the MMORPG. I would have figured they would have made like a Dead Space, Dead Space MOBA. That would seem like the most logical choice. And honestly, a Dead Space MOBA sounds pretty interesting if they still kept to the third person. You basically have like a group of people. They didn't have to do creeps or whatnot, but they could have sort of the customization and the progression, the team play the same way.
With all the different necromorphs that are actually in game too, it leaves a lot of options for actual like champions too.
Yeah, but they've gone just the typical fantasy route, and I've played my fair share of MOBAs, and fantasy is one sort of setting that MOBAs could do without. There are just so many fantasy setting MOBAs out there. I mean, we've got Trion World, Battlefield Graxia, League of Legends, Dota 2. 90% of MOBAs, it seems, are somewhat fantasy-based.
Are they all fantasy, though? Because, I mean, you look at something like League, where, it's got guys with swords and wizards, but it's also got, like Caitlyn is kind of a steampunk kind of character, and they have, giant robots and so on. So
I guess you could
it's
say
sort
fantasy,
of a mix, a lot of them, I think.
Fantasy from the perspective of it has, like, magic in it. That's
sure.
what I'm thinking of fantasy. Like, it has some type of magical entity or property to it, and the characters themselves aren't really themed as a group, as a collective in some way. But yeah, Dead Space MOBA doesn't look like it's going to happen. Looks like it's going to be some type of fantasy-based MOBA. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Obviously, EA is going to put out a bunch of PR and whatnot and put out probably a trailer at some point. Doesn't look like they were trying to let the cat out of the bag this early. But it doesn't really inspire confidence with the lines like, familiar experience, Like, I want something new out of my MOBA. I don't want the same thing I've been playing for 3 years. So finally coming to our last article or last bit of news for today. This is something that's very new, and it's currently still developing. So we may have more details for you come the next week, or this week rather, by the time you guys actually watch this. And that is dealing with Neverwinter again. Now, Neverwinter is sort of having a crisis at the moment, whereby their economy is pretty much crippled. There was an Astral Diamond sort of hack or exploit available that allowed you to accrue Astral Diamonds like out of your butt, like out of nowhere. You could just get millions upon millions of Astral Diamonds. And for those of you who don't know, Astral Diamonds are how you purchase everything It's like a pseudo cash shop item, or currency rather. It also is how you purchase stuff in the auction house. There are vendors that require it, and it is a key integral part of the economy within Neverwinter. Now, Perfect World and Cryptic Studios have been ongoingly sort of dealing with this issue. And Kevin, I know you've been sort of researching a little bit of what's going on currently with that whole thing. What is the current status?
Our status is still as what it was when we last checked. The auction house is still shut down, and the Zen market or whatever is still shut down. The Astral Diamond Exchange, I mean. As of last, their exact words were, "We have a plan of action. We're verifying the exact timeline with the Neverwinter team. Then we'll be triple-checking the planned forum post with all key stakeholders before posting. We're not finished yet, folks, but we're getting closer." So what it looks like is they figured out most of what was causing it and how they've gotten the plan to fix it. It's just implementing it. We're still waiting.
All right. Now, in terms of what they plan to do to fix it, there has been several mentions both by them and the players of what they're doing. Player bans are one of them, of course. Those who are being exploiting this have been getting emails stating that they've been banned. They were mentioning some rollbacks. They mentioned character rollbacks specifically, but then right after that, they started mentioning that players were getting banned. So I don't know if that's one and the same, or if some players are getting rolled back while other ones are getting outright banned. I guess if they did like a ton of it.
From what I've been researching, the character rollbacks are for, let's say you posted something in the auction house and someone used fraudulent diamonds to pick them up. Your character would be rolled back, or it'd be rolled back to the point where you still had control of that item. It'd still be in the auction house, and you no longer have the astral diamonds you received for it. That's from what I'm getting from my understanding. And the bans are going again, to everyone who is actually using the exploit for their advantage.
Yeah. So the servers are still down at this moment, but Perfect World has stated that they are not doing any character wipes. They're not going to wipe and start over. Keep in mind, the game is technically still in open beta. So by all accounts, it is still not finished. But because of the fact that they've already started taking real-world money for the game, it makes sense that they cannot wipe or roll back to square one, because there's already been a ton of money invested in the game. But this has significant ramifications for the auction house, for the economy. I mean, if you're any kind of founder member, you got Astral Diamonds. And now, essentially, your Astral Diamonds are worthless currently because of the fact that the people who duped have tons of them. And, of course, they're rolling everything back, but you got to wonder, like, what is this going to do to the player base? Are people going to outright leave? What happens to, because for those of you who don't know, Astral Diamonds also can be converted to Zen, which is the cash shop currency that you actually pay real money for. So imagine, how that messed up everything in terms of players actually converting Astral Diamonds into Zen and then purchasing real items off the auction, the cash shop with that. There's all these sort of like ripple effects going on, and I'm really curious to see like how they plan on recovering from this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a couple times this week. I was going to log in between this and all the downtime. It's like I get on and I just check Twitter and they're like, oh well, we're trying to figure out the downtime, and of course I don't log on because I can't, and it's just like one thing after another, where it's almost to the point now where I almost don't want to log on. I don't even want to bother until they get out of open beta, until they try to figure out all the issues they're having with this, with the downtime, with possible rollbacks and that sort of thing. It's a real deterrent to my, wanting to play.
See, and I'm curious, there's always innocent bystanders in all of this. In any sort of fix that they do, we've seen in previous games where they do like massive widespread fixes and whatnot. There are characters who weren't, involved in anything, who actually get sort of shafted. Either they log in, they're missing something completely, or they were included in the ban list or what have you. I know I have been, what's the word I'm looking for? I've been banned in an MMORPG for not doing anything. I was just a part of a mass widespread ban list that they did essentially. And
you were collateral damage.
Collateral damage, yes.
There you go.
And I had to go through the whole process of contacting them and stating to them that no, I didn't do anything. Can you please unlock my account? Blah blah blah. That was when I was playing Aeon. They were doing like mass bans for a bunch of people that were botting in that game, and they had banned my account too. And I was like, what? I didn't do anything. But yeah, so Neverwinter's been having this issue, but they've also been having issue with like exploits and class bugs that have been in there since beta. Some of the bugs are so critical that it's allowing them to like one shot, like the great fighter, which is the tank class in the game, has some type of bug currently where he can essentially almost one shot any mob, which obviously makes clearing some of the content, especially some of the harder difficulty bosses, trivially easy, very easy to do. And no doubt this is something also they have to deal with that as of this time they have still yet to acknowledge or fix, I guess you could say. But interestingly, this exploit, this Astro Diamond exploit, has been in the game since the closed beta. It was reported in the closed beta, and Cryptic Studio did not do anything to rectify it. In fact, it goes back so far that this same exploit was at one point in I keep saying Star Wars, but Star Trek Online, the Cryptic Studios' other MMORPG. It had the exact same exploit that it was plaguing the game. So it's obvious that some code or some sort of process that they go about creating some of the portions of the auction house and what have you in their MMORPGs is fundamentally flawed. And why they're not addressing this, or why they waited for it to blow up in their faces now, I mean, that just seems like some kind of like management issue or something. I have no clue as to why they will let something that big, especially after the whole Diablo 3 gold duping thing that happened not too recently. It's just very baffling, in my opinion. And I like Neverwinter. I really like Neverwinter, but it's like begging me to hate it. Like I don't understand. Yeah,
I mean, there was I'm reading one of the posts here. Someone said that he's actually listed off like 12 bugs that he found and reported that all in beta that he said never got resolved. So just including one that the auction house thing, basically, that was closed and lost, quote unquote, lost a couple times. So yeah, you do wonder what kind of quality control they had during that process.
It seems as like they don't have enough QA guys, because QA is sort of like where bugs go first to be like tested and double checked. And if anything, either QA to development, like the coders don't have enough time to fix the bugs, or the QA is just so understaffed they can't get to everything. Like that would be my opinion of like where things are happening or going wrong, because those are sort of the two crucial areas. Because I've seen a lot of discussion in terms of like past QA individuals, like how that process works, and it is quite a lot of work to verify a bug and to go through it multiple times and then get it passed on to the appropriate programmer. So that would be my guess, but of course we don't know anything because it's all shrouded in PR mask and secrecy and what have you.
And the Twitter still is not giving us much more. It's just a lot of the same. Oh, a couple hours away, a couple hours away, a couple hours away. So.
All
yep.
right. Well, we'll keep you guys posted. We'll definitely be posting an article about this on MMOBomb.com, so you can read the full details in there in terms of who all is being affected and what is being affected. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and finish up our news and move on to the weekly bombs. Now, the weekly bombs this week, why don't we go ahead and have Kevin, why don't you start first?
My biggest one right now is the NABOM actually is to the people who exploit games like this. I understand that you want to, further yourself in a game, but you've got to know that these things are going to get caught, but it just ruins it for everyone else. Instead of all these people, I've got all these items. Instead, now we have servers down for hours. We have all these people who wanted to play and can't. You might even have a chance at really damaging a very quality game just because of your own personal, gains. And it really frustrates me when stuff like this happens, because it's not the first game this has happened to, and I'm positive it won't be the last.
People are selfish.
Mm-hmm. And it's especially exacerbated by being a free-to-play game where you're like, okay, if they screw me up here, if they find it and ban me or whatever, I'll just make a new account, start over.
Exactly.
It's a little less. I mean, they had a big exploit in Guild Wars 2 when that first started, and then I could see you really wouldn't want to do that sort of thing because you still have to pay $60 for the base game. Obviously, people did it anyway, but with a free-to-play game, it's going to be even more of that incentive to just say, what the hell, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. If I get banned, I get banned. If I don't, hey, I got all this extra stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Jason, why don't you go ahead and what is your DeBomb A-bomb this week?
Well, I've got an A-bomb for the Lord of the Rings Online, which I've been a pretty good player of for about 6 years, and I just can't even log in now.
Really?
Yeah, the last update, the one that went live just this week, um, I can't even get into the load screen. Like as soon as I enter into the launcher goes away, the process is working. I've checked my task manager, it works for a few seconds, and then it's just gone. I've looked on the forums. There are a lot of other people reporting this exact same thing since the update, and I don't know. It's just sad for it if this is it, because I don't really know that I have the patience or the interest at this point in the game to really go and try and figure it all out. So it's like this might be the end for me in this game if I can't get into it anymore.
That'd be a sad way to go.
Yeah.
Just literally not be able to log into the game.
Yeah.
I was actually experiencing sort of the same thing with Neverwinter on my laptop. After I was playing it fine, then some recent update made it to where every time I log into the game, it will go through the whole load screen and then never take me to the character selection screen, ever. Like, at all. It works fine on my PC, my home PC, but my laptop, it just does not work. And the only way I found to make it work is to run it in safe mode and then change all the graphical settings back up to full once I actually log back into the game. And I don't want to do that every single time I log in on my laptop.
I got the same issue, but I managed to fix it just by reinstalling the game. Which, I mean, that's sad that I actually have to go through a full reinstall and repatch.
Some people don't have the bandwidth to do that. You know, some people don't have the bandwidth to download another 15 gigs or what have you, however big the actual final file is.
And yeah, if I have to do that for Lotro, I think I'm just not even going to bother.
You're just gonna cut your wrist. You're like, no, I can't do this.
Well, if I honestly didn't have the install file on the desktop, wouldn't have bothered, honestly.
That's true. That is true. Now, my A-bomb is going to go to, it's going to be A-bomb to Nintendo. Nintendo. The company that we all grew up with for home consoles, you're failing me. I don't know what you're doing, but they are issuing, they're basically taking all the money from Let's Players, the people on YouTube who play a game and commentate over it. They're taking all the videos, the newest videos that they've been doing for their games. They're not copyright striking them, so they're not taking the video off. But any ad money that goes to that game, or that video, I should say, it goes directly to Nintendo instead. So they're just siphoning off everybody's money from who's doing the Let's Play for those. And some of these people do that for a living. Like, that's what they do. They play Let's Plays, they entertain. They're entertainers. They're internet entertainers. And you certainly can't argue that, they should get a real job, because in this day and age, the internet does provide jobs. I mean, look at us on MMOBomb. This is our job. We write about video games on a website, so people who do those videos for entertainment for individuals, hey, if it works for you, great. But I'm really disappointed in Nintendo for taking these steps, because I'm like, if anything, you should embrace this. It's free advertisement. They're promoting your game. They're certainly not bashing it or anything like that. And then you're just going to take their, source of revenue from that game when you guys are a multi-million-dollar company. Like, is the Wii U doing that bad that you have to take YouTube revenue from that? Like, I don't understand that, Nintendo. I just don't. Did you guys actually play Nintendo, or were you guys fans of Nintendo? And have you played it recently, or
back in the day more so? I kind of I had an NES, I had a Super NES. I moved over to PlayStation then. Afterwards, I don't think I got whatever came after the Super NES, N64 maybe. I don't remember. Yeah, I didn't do that. So
I really feel
like back in the day.
I really feel like Nintendo has lost touch with the gamers who grew up on Nintendo. Like they keep making games as if we're still those kids. And I understand that they can make games for kids, and that's been sort of their thing. But the Wii U was a primary opportunity for them to make a next-gen console that did well for, our, age of gamers. And this, combined with the Wii U's, failure, it's not putting me in a good place with Nintendo. Not at all.
Yeah, and for someone who grew up like me on the N64 and all the wonderful games that were for everybody on that, It is incredibly disappointing where they've ended up. You and I were talking about this not that long ago, how just the console quality has gone downhill to a point where is it really worth it for them to even attempt to make a console anymore?
They would be better off just making their staple sort of like iconic game series. Because this is sort of off track, but a lot of companies have been announcing no Wii U support this next year. Like, they're not making their games for the Wii U. It is an absolute train wreck. Some games have literally only been selling like a few thousand copies at all.
Well, it kind of brings me, if that's why they're doing their E3 thing this year, the way they're doing it, to try to actually drum up some interest in the Wii U.
Oh, you're talking about where they basically are not going to E3, but instead they're going to Best Buys around California and letting players play their latest games at those Best Buys. But I mean, come on, everybody knows this is going to mean like a 3-hour wait to play a game for like 15 minutes.
But if it gets people there, who knows? I mean,
I can see. I mean, it's better them doing that than nothing.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see it not having the as huge or impactful as an effect as they wanted, just due to how many people will actually show up for those events. Now, if they have tons of Wii U's to the point where they can just like field a lot of people, then maybe. And it certainly is good for Best Buy traffic. That company's been having a little bit of issues lately. But yeah, I'm just not in a good place right now in my heart for Nintendo. I have a little bit of animosity toward them. As someone who has done YouTube for 3+ years now, I just do not like seeing people who put the the time in to create all these series and really promote certain games that they feel are worth it, for the company to kind of stab them in the back and take that income from them.
What it just means is they're just not going to make them anymore.
Yeah, they're just
and a lot of them I think are pulling down their old videos. So I don't know what Nintendo hopes to get from this. That's what's going to happen. Is they're all going to be pulling down their videos and not making any more. So they're not actually going to make money out of it.
If anything, they're just going to generate bad press out of this.
Yeah,
that's all it's doing, is generating bad press for them.
Yep.
Probably some Japanese executive who just thought this was a great idea.
Yeah. Someone who's detached from like the average day gamer, essentially. Like that's really what it seems to be happening. I mean, that seems to be what's happening in a lot of companies, including like EA, just being detached from what gamers want and from what gamers find to be important to them.
Although EA is one of those companies that's not going to be supporting the Wii U.
Yeah, they are not going to be supporting the Wii U. I mean, the Madden football game, this is just the game that I actually saw figures for, but Madden, which is EA's one of EA's popular sports franchises, only sold like 30,000 copies on the Wii U, which is horrific. That's like terrible.
That sells like 10 million a year usually or something.
Yeah, it sells a ton. So obviously, EA pulling out the Wii U is basically going to die in the water, I think. It's not going to have the impact that they wanted. They're going to have to either go back to the drawing board and release a new console, or start churning out a bunch of new third-party titles from companies who can produce like one-offs and not so much like big branded stuff from EA and whatnot. But all right, let's go ahead and move on then to the member bombs. Now, let's see here. We had a couple of member bombs here, starting with someone who actually put their real name. Carlos, I'm just going to say your first name. I don't want to give out your last name. But Carlos, you said, huge da bomb to me, as in Carlos, because I'm just so kick-ass it's ridiculous. And a small da bomb to Spunkify for busting his ass this last couple of weeks doing all the videos and live streams by himself. Well, Carlos, I'm glad that you think you're just so amazing. That's a lot of confidence for someone. I do appreciate also the small da bomb that you gave to me. I'm glad to know that a few people do like or enjoy the content that I'm able to put out for MMOBomb. And Jason's here as well. Jason's working his butt off, giving us statistics for SOTOR, giving us DC Universe Online stuff. I mean, I'm glad to have Jason on board as well, because honestly, 2 writers are way better than 1. Now, Jason, with that in mind, why don't you go ahead and take the other member to bomb we have this week?
With that kind of acclaim, how could I not?
I know, right?
All right, this one comes from Shasau33. He says, huge da bomb to Neverwinter. I'm having a whole bunch of fun playing the game. Sure, the game has some minor issues, but I'm sure they'll be fixed within time.
Wow,
he's not playing it right now. I can tell you that.
Oh man, that couldn't have been better timed. Oh.
I mean, he's right though. Like you said, it is fun when you can play it. It is fun.
And the issues up to this point were minor. Now they're much
major.
major.
Oh man, Shasso, I would wonder what your current most updated sort of comment would be. You should leave it in the comments below. I would like to check it out. What your new impression of Neverwinter is.
He's gonna go from a bomb this week to an A bomb next.
Yeah, it's gonna be an A bomb to Neverwinter. I was having a whole lot of fun playing the game, and now the game has a lot of major issues, and I don't know if they'll be fixed anytime soon. It's like a complete switch. Sorry for just like rambling there for a second, but let's going to the weekly questions from viewers. Now, I think some people got a little bit confused as to what the weekly question was. I don't blame them. It was a little bit of a complicated weekly question, but some people thought it was what MMO started them in MMORPGs, and we got a lot of responses to that question that no one asked. But the actual question was, what game did you initially hate when you first played but liked later? And Kevin, why don't you take the first one here?
First one was from Warhammer Rules. And, Warhammer's Rules. Sorry. There's a Z there. It's really classy. I kind of got pissed at Aeon at the start because there were no quests to level up, just killing mobs. You had to kill mobs for hours. What really got me going was the PvP. And after a few months, I liked it more. Now I have 16 characters at level 60. That's impressive. 16?
That's a level of insanity.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
That is dedication, yeah. And a couple alt accounts as well, if I can do the math.
Yeah, because I can't put them all on one. That is...
Well, could you buy new character slots with the free-to-play? I might be able to.
I think so.
I still think it limits it at, I want to say it's like 8 or something.
If they have like 2, that means he had 8 accounts to play 16 characters.
Well, no, he probably would have bought more character slots for his free account.
I just want to think...
Like 8
I like the idea of he just making 8 accounts.
8 accounts.
he doesn't pay any money. He just makes 8 accounts and has
every
2
time
characters.
there's an update. Every time there's an update to the game, he gets 8 emails. To
8 different emails. Yeah. I actually, whenever I sign up for betas for games, I put them on multiple emails. So whenever I get like an invite, it hits everything. And I'm like, oh, I have this email. And they're like, oh, I have another email in that other account. And I look at it, it's like the same thing 4 times. I'm like, ah. And then we have Thunder 45645. Thunder 45645. That's somewhat of a tongue twister. He says, I have to say, Dust 514 actually. I played it in beta and it wasn't easy to play. No tutorials, no backstory and such. The worst was when I played it. The only thing I did was die. There were snipers and also had such high recoil, and the tanks were just something that you could own and win the game with. Now it is small maps, no snipers, really fun, and the recoil has been reduced to the Battlefield 3 or COD style, so not that much. And no tanks! The only problem is when I try to revive someone, they respawn. Goddamn spawn times, and then he does like a face. I can't show you
how's that face? How's that face? There we go.
Face. That's right. That's my mental note. Whenever I see that face, that's the sound it makes.
You know, every time I see that face, I'm gonna do that now.
Yeah, I played Dust 514 on the beta before I went into open beta, and oh man, I'm good at shooters on PC, but I might as well have been like a toddler with a PlayStation controller when playing Dust. I was so terrible.
So it's just like Eve. It's got that learning curve that you can't...
I actually play Eve actively.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like it probably took you 5 years to get to where you are now or something.
I've only been playing Eve for like 3 months.
Oh,
consistently.
okay.
And I've died a ton. And I still don't know a ton. But I'm gradually starting to grasp like the concepts, I guess you could say. Like, you know, in most MMORPGs, you grasp sort of like the game as a whole. You grasp individual mechanics very quickly. In Eve, you grasp the concepts of mechanics. You're like, oh, I see how that would kind of work, but I don't understand how it works. But I see like its importance. That's sort of like you go in stages where you understand the concept, then you understand the idea, and then you get good at it. Like, I understand the concept of PvP. I've done PvP. I am horrific at PvP. Like, I'm in that 3rd stage right there where I'm just like, okay, now I gotta learn how to, like, push a bunch of buttons and keep range at, you know, shoot guns and pew-pew and whatnot. And Dust is the same way, where it definitely is not as easy as Call of Duty or Battlefield 3. There's a lot of character progression in that game, and so if you're a fan of character progression in your shooters, I would definitely recommend trying out Dust if you have a PlayStation 3. You can plug in, of course, keyboard and mouse. And there is a little bit of auto aim in there as well. So if that annoys you, unfortunately, it is sort of a console FPS, and that kind of comes with that territory. So that does it for our weekly questions. Now, our question of the week, I don't actually have it written on here for you guys, but our question of the week actually revolves around Rift, and that is dealing with, do you guys feel that paying for gear, essentially, that allows you to get up to speed with everybody else that's been playing beforehand, is a fair and non-pay-to-win advantage, as long as you're able to get the same gear by playing through the current content? Do you feel like that is a necessary evil, essentially, to get players up to speed who don't have a lot of time to progress through the earlier content to get them to the latest content? Or do you feel like that should never, ever be available in an MMORPG at all? Just gear, strike that completely. It's a little bit different with Rift because the game didn't just release. I mean, it'd be one thing if a game was released and they immediately had the gear offered. But Rift has been out for a while, and so it is sort of like a alternative to those who don't want to progress through old gear that players may not be actually participating in. That is the question of the week. I'll go ahead and post it, of course, in the comment or description area of the podcast and in the comments below, so you can actually check it out there as well. That is going to conclude our free-to-play cast episode 69. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. For Jason and Kevin and myself, we will see you for the next episode. Jason, Kevin, do you guys want to sort of plug your usual Twitters or hashtags or 360 no-scopes, whatever you want to plug?
Oh, I will. I'm Winter Informal on Twitter, and I did get over 1,000 followers this week.
You did?
Thank
did
you
you actually get tweeted about it? Did they tweet you about it? Like, oh man, you have 1,000.
No. Twitter did not acknowledge it. No.
No, I didn't mean Twitter. I just thought maybe your followers would have, they're
I did
so
make a
hard.
post when I was actually sitting at $9.99 for like a day. So I just kept looking and checking back to make sure. And finally I got number 1,000 and I called him out and said, hey, everybody, look. And there's actually a guy whose last name is Winter, so it was kind of interesting.
Really? Are you sure you just didn't make it like an extra account? And you'd be like, 1,000. I subscribed to myself.
Yeah, that's actually what happened. I'm a loser.
Winter.
Yeah.
I see what's going on. All right. And Kevin, are you still disconnected from everything socially?
Okay, yeah, I'll have a plug that I'm still hiding from everybody on Facebook. Yay!
Okay. And for myself, you can catch me at Smugglify on Twitter. I also do the Bomb live stream every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can go ahead and check out all of our articles on MMOBomb.com, all the ones that were discussed here today. But for everybody here on the Free to Play cast, thanks for coming out and watching or listening to us, in case if you're just playing a video game and something in the meantime. And we'll see you guys for the next episode here. Smugglify out. Later, guys.